After getting evicted for not paying rent, Ewan had finally packed his suitcase and was ready to leave. But as he was about to board the airplane, space-time began breaking apart, and a portal materialized at the end of his path. Without even realizing it, he was isekai'd into a different dimension, and before his eyes, a dragon nearly ran him over and ended his pathetic life. But while he was on the ground, he saw Spider-Girl and Tony Stark flying around, along with Hermione on her broom, and a white frozone gliding past him. Above his empty head, a girl was flying a dragon away, and when a land beast licked his disgusting face, Ewan finally realized that he was in a completely different world. Ewan was an ugly, disgusting, worthless loser who lost his parents because of their gambling addiction and wasted his entire life playing useless video games. But before he knew it, he accidentally entered a secret hidden dimension where a beautiful, seductive vampire killed him for being the weakest man alive. In his last moments, however, Ewan summoned the hottest fairy from the past and used her body to awaken his god form, giving him the forbidden power to destroy all of humanity. Eventually, he managed to find the stone god, and two magicians told him that the god will measure his magical capacity. But as he touched the stone, a bright white light emanated to blind the others, but the two magicians disqualified his ugly ass immediately, and everyone started laughing at how weak he was. When he wondered why they were laughing, the magician explained that the stone god glows in various lights, but a white light is a sign of an absolutely useless human without any magic. Just then, however, one of them noticed there was a small streak of green light, and told him that he had the smallest wood magic in existence, although the only thing smaller was the actual wood he was hiding.
You're a victim!
Walking away in shame, Ewan wondered why his second life was about to be as depressing as his last, because no matter how hard he focused, he wasn't able to cast any magic, and spent the rest of his week sulking in depression. However, an old man appeared before his eyes, telling him not to waste his life away, because even though he had the weakest magic in the world, he was the only other person in this country to awaken wood magic. As depressing as being a farmer was, Ewan knew he needed a way to make money and survive. So for the next few weeks, he began upgrading his magical capacity until he was able to grow plants with his powers. But on a random night, he heard the voice of two simps on their knees for a girl, kissing her feet. One of the spineless dweebs began kissing the hot girl's neck, and while Ewan tried holding his breath watching, the girl's eyes turned demonic, and she bit into his neck to suck all of his blood away. As she began flying, she revealed her true vampiric form, and when the other simp awakened his dormant magical energy, he began summoning rock fists from the ground and launching them towards the vampire. However, she dropped his friend and used her vines to destroy all of his attacks, sending them crashing towards the ground. As the man attempted to run away, the vampiric vines managed to restrain him, and while she was drinking his blood, Ewan began trying to flee the scene. But before he could get far into the forest, the vampire's massive cannons had already noticed he was running away, and as soon as he thought he was safe, the vampire appeared right behind him. After getting closer and asking him what he was doing, Ewan tried running away from her, but she destroyed the ground and used her thorny vines to tie him up. After all the hentais he'd watched throughout his life, Ewan never thought he would be the one to get penetrated by tentacles, and the vampire had began drinking his blood. In his final moments, a massive beacon of light exploded towards the sky, and from the depths of his heart, a girl materialized and appeared before his eyes. He realized that if he was the main character, this girl would be his servant. But the girl told him that she was from hell, and summoned her sword, telling him that she was here to take his disgusting virgin life away. However, she realized that his body had already passed out, and the vampire told her that Ewan was nothing but her delicious sacrifice. The red-haired girl slashed the vines away, and told him that she would save his soul and restore his strength. But in order to do so, she was going to exchange the vampire's vitality for his. So she began flying towards the vampire, and before the vampire was able to even land her strike, the fairy slashed her down, eliminating her with a single blow. As she drew her vitality out, she began transporting it to Ewan's body, and from the distance, a mysterious woman realized it was finally time. A few moments later, Ewan opened his eyes once again, realizing that the girl had saved him, and asked her if she was his fairy. He wondered if she would become his personal maid and allow him to use her every night, but the girl wondered if he was able to recognize her. However, Ewan had never seen her before in his life, but the fairy told him that the only reason she saved his life was so that she could end it herself. As she let those words out, the fairy began flying towards him with her sword. but after slashing him down, the wound appeared on her body. She wondered what Yuen was doing, and the mysterious girl appeared, introducing herself as the chairman of the Shoyu Academy. She told the hot fairy to calm her ugly ass down, because if she continues harming her summoner, she would be the only one receiving the damage. However, the fairy didn't believe her words, and tried slashing him down once again, but was knocked down, so the chairman came to Yuen and handed him the spirit manual, telling him to raise his hand. As soon as he touched the book, a light emanated around him, and his body began speaking on its own, summoning the fairy to return back into her book, and revealing that her name was Mo Fei. Later that night, the chairman said that his new book would explain the history of the fairies, but since it belonged to Shio Academy, the only way she would give it to him is if he were to attend their school, and find the vampire hiding among them. In return, however, she promised to give him 3 more fairy seeds that would be even stronger than Mo Fei. So Yuen got on his knees and promised to be the best student alive, wondering what types of fairies he was going to add to his harem next. While reading the manual at night, the system inside the book activated, telling him that this book contained the memory world of the fairies. After all, fairies aren't born, but are the incarnations of past lives. So the only way to fully control a fairy is to go into her memories and befriend her. However, Yuen was too weak to go into Mo Fei's memories now, so she told him to come back in 24 hours, and fuse the book into his cell phone, and replace Siri, making their communication easier. The following day at school, everyone was disgusted that the failure was going to be in their classes, so one of the guys tried embarrassing him by rolling an ice crystal on the ground. As Yuen went to pick up the trap, a massive green light emanated around them, glowing with a second light, and making Yuen the first person in history to have a double attribute. In an instant, his body scanned the entire room until he found the hottest girl, running up to her, and using his greatest Reddit pickup line, wondering if she would mayhaps be interested in doing a fork noodle. However, she ran away in embarrassment, and the guys were shocked that Yuen was the bravest Chad alive. After running away, he asked the system in his phone to explain why he lost control over his body. So the fairy told him he'd awaken the charm ability in his sleep, along with his secondary magical attribute, the wind magic. For the rest of the day, all the girls thought he was the coolest guy alive, but during magic battle class, Yuen was the only one who couldn't keep up with the pace. When they were finally done, the instructor told them that they will be practicing their magic output in duels, and the one who was bullying Yuen earlier volunteered to fight in the first match, and challenged Yuen to be his opponent. So when the teacher screamed at Yuen to take his position, they both faced off against one another, but the princess of the nation arrived and was going to be watching their duel. The disgusting moron swore that he would defeat Yuen for the princess, and launched his blades of wind towards him, but Yuen had negated his attack without even trying. However, his opponent launched a tornado towards him, and Mo Fei told him to summon her already, and finish this match right away. However, Yuen wanted to handle his opponent alone, and launched into the middle of the tornado, activating his nature magic to destroy the worthless moron. But after winning the match, Yuen was knocked out and woke up a while later inside a burning village. As he walked around, a man ran up begging for Yuen to save him, but a strong man pulled him to the ground, and as he crawled backwards, he saw a little girl shivering, telling him that she was cold. Realizing she was burning up, he decided to cool her body down with a towel, but she passed out on him. Before long, 2 ugly losers appeared from the alley, wondering how many gold coins they could sell the girl for. Yuen tried stopping them, but got his disgusting face smacked down, and they carried her away. Determined to save her, he snatched her up and began running off, but they caught up to him, and began beating him as he protected the girl. When she thanked him for saving her, he realized that she was Mo Fei, and began falling towards a light. Just then, he woke up, and the leprechaun told him that he was in the fairy spirit world. This world was the space of their memories, and that it was the only way to gain full control over his fairy, because since they were originally human, all the memories from their human life were relived in this world, and that the only way to have control over his fairy was to understand her emotions. Deciding to explore her solution, Yuen called upon the fairy, but she had no time for his bullshit and demanded to know what he wants. So Yuen began telling her that he was a gentleman who tips his fedora and believes in respecting all women, saying that he would never command her to do anything she didn't support. She thought his speech was inspiring, but said that he was the same as every other perv in her past. Just then, two girls with massive cannons appeared inside, and Ewan hid himself under the covers. As the girls visited one of the earlier simps, asking to taste the rest of his meat, Ewan realized they were the vampires he was asked to find. However, they had already noticed his presence, and Ewan was afraid that they would make him his dinner before Mo-Fei could be summoned. Just then, the Vampire King appeared in the room, and told the girls that they have a duty later tonight. After returning home, Ewan began to wonder where the chairwoman of the school had gone, worried he would get isekai'd soon. In the night, Ewan decided to eat instant noodles, but soon heard footsteps outside. Thinking it was the vampires, he decided to hide, wondering how they discovered his home. However, the intruder was only a girl, and she noticed the delicious aroma inside, but Ewan knocked her ass out with a punch. Right then, he discovered that she was the princess, and thought he would be executed if he was spotted beating her up. Realizing she was alone, he decided to pull her inside, and laid her on the bed, and having no other place to sleep, he decided to lay by her side. However, when it was morning, she thought he was a perv, and knocked out his tooth before kicking his plot. With his future seeds close to getting annihilated, Ewan began explaining that he helped her inside after she passed out on his porch. So after a moment, he realized he could seduce her by creating instant noodles, and as she took a spoon, she thought it was delicious. Just then, she sensed a presence outside, and told him that someone was at the door. At that moment, a vampire broke down the door, but Ewan and the princess had already sneaked off into the other room. As the vampires raided his house, they wondered where he was hiding, and Ewan caught a jar before it broke. One vampire followed his scent to a door, and destroyed it with her giant cannons, but found it empty. However, as they tried destroying the room, Ewan restrained them with vines, and began running away with the princess. As they arrived in the forest, he told her to hide behind the trees, but after a few minutes, the vampires had already arrived. As they charged at him, Ewan summoned Mo-Fei to fight for him. So immediately, she appeared with a flaming energy, drawing her sword and blasting the vampires away, and raised her sword to summon the grave of hell. The vampires thought they had a chance, and tried attacking her, but she cast a spell that burned them with hellfire, and they realized they were trapped in an invisible barrier. However, the barrier suddenly cracked, and the Vampire King descended to the ground. The girls thought they were safe, but he destroyed them instantly, and the leprechaun told Ewan that he was a level 8 knight. Even so, Mo-Fei remained eager to fight, and they charged at each other, clashing swords, but she promised to still eliminate Ewan afterwards. As she withdrew, she discovered that she was wounded, and Ewan asked the leprechaun for her help. So she told him that the only way to increase Mo-Fei's strength was to rebuild her spirit world. Ewan thought it would be easy, and told her to teleport him to the spirit world, but she told him that his spiritual power was not enough. At the same time, Mo-Fei and the knight clashed swords, but he pushed her off. As Ewan realized that he had exhausted his spiritual strength during the duel, he wondered how he could recover it. Just then, the princess appeared before him, telling him that she was a spiritual master, and could help him with enough spiritual strength to teleport to the spirit world. So he told her to close her eyes, and promised to serve her noodles for a year if she would grant him her strength. At once, she started gathering her spiritual powers, but the knight smacked Mo-Fei aside, and summoning a power of his own, he unleashed a flame to destroy him. Luckily, Mo-Fei saved him, taking the impact, and the energy penetrated Ewan. Inside her spirit world, Mo-Fei slayed some bandits, but decided to spare the last one as he pleaded for mercy. Just as she began to leave, the lowlife thought he could sneak up on her, and began running to slay her. But Ewan screamed at her to watch her back, and she stabbed him immediately. However, when he hurried to meet her, she went right through him, and they realized that she could not see them. With Ewan shocked by this discovery, the fairy said this was only possible if his soul already existed in this world. That evening, as Mo-Fei appeared from an alley, she spotted a dude before her, and told him that she likes his long sword and hopes to buy it. But he told her that it wasn't up for sale. As she left, Ewan thought this new guy looks as ugly as he does, and wondered if he may have influenced her past somehow. After a few days, Mo-Fei noticed the mysterious man playing with the kids outside, and thought he was a gentleman. However, when he tried saying hello, she shut up her window instantly. That day in the street, a group of bullies started beating up Mr. Gentleman, but he continued protecting a girl. When Mo-Fei arrived at the alley, she grew angry at the sight, remembering that Ewan had saved her in the same way when she was younger. As the leader tried knocking out his tooth, she caught and squeezed his hand. And as they realized that she was an infamous killer, the cowards ran off immediately. To thank her for saving them, the man offered her his long sword, calling it a gift, and she slashed a glass to test if it was sharpened. So in exchange for the sword, she told him that she would save him whenever he was in trouble. However, Yuen thought she was being baited into a trap, thinking that the man was a spy, and had intentionally waited to draw her attention, thinking that the man had successfully tricked her and was leading her right where he wants. Meanwhile, the princess was starting to exhaust her powers. At the same time, Mo Fei and the knight continued clashing swords, but he kicked her away, creating an explosion to devastate her body. Even so, she was bent on protecting Yuen. As the vampire unleashed a powerful aura, Mo Fei stood in his way, and he charged at her with his Aurora sword. Ready to die, she caused her sword to vanish, and his long sword penetrated deep inside her. However, she decided to activate a curse with her blood, and at that instant, large vines bound him up, and she realized that he would only stay trapped for as long as she was alive. Even so, she was determined to protect Yuen until her last breath, but was sad that she could not change the past. In the spirit world, Yuen began to wonder how they could become visible to Mo Fei. With his efforts having proven futile, he decided to scream at the guy, calling him a worthless moron, hoping he would hear his voice. So the man told him to shut the fuck up, and Yuen realized that he has hope. The guy said that they have the same soul, but Yuen told him that he was evil and demanded to know what he intends to do with the girl. Yuen's alternate soul introduced himself as An Yu, the rearrangement of letters in his name, and told Yuen that Mo Fei was merely an NPC in their game, but Yuen told him that she was important to him. The next day, Mo Fei heard footsteps outside her apartment, and as An Yu knocked on her door, she pulled him inside and nearly ended his life. However, he was unfazed and told her that her eyes are prettier than the stars. When she asked why he had come, he told her that he came to offer her some food, but she realized that it had spilled on the floor as she pulled him inside. Feeling sad, she tried to take it, but he promised to make her another one and decided to leave. Yuen tried screaming at her to come to her senses, as An Yu was merely toying with her heart, but his words were emptier than the air. That evening, as they sat on a tower, taking in the lovely sight, An Yu told her that the tower was the safest place in the city. He said that he was an explorer, and had traveled all over the world in search of treasure, but she wondered why a weak, ugly loser like him was able to travel anywhere. He told her that he wants to take her to a faraway island, and to spend every day making her happier, but she wondered if she could abandon her present life. Within a few days, she had begun slaying thieves, but soon came across An Yu outside the alley, and hid her sword, afraid he would be disappointed. He told her that he bought ingredients for dinner, and suggested that they head home together, but she told him to head home first, and promised to join him soon. As he left, she hid inside the alley, and was sad to have tricked him. When she arrived home, An Yu revealed the food he made, saying that it was a special meal his mama used to make. However, Yuen thought every single word was a lie, and wondered why Mo Fei was too moronic to see beyond his lies. Feeling bad for herself, she tried telling him that she was a killer, but he told her that he loves her anyway, and was lucky to be by her side. She told him that a man had protected her when she was little, and had made her grow determined to live. So An Yu said that he wasn't going to leave her like the other man, and would remain by her side forever. By the following day, Mo Fei began wondering how she would make enough money for their trip to the island. The guild master thought her trip was a trap, and warned her to stay away from An Yu, but she was already lost in the realms of love, and her mind was made up. As she met him that evening, she revealed that she had bought 2 tickets for their ship, and could not wait to get out of this hellhole, so he told her to wait for him at the tower. The next day, Mo Fei slayed another thief, taking it for her final kill, and after returning home, she closed her box and began to leave. In the street, she came across 2 dudes who began teasing her about her trip. However, when they realized she could end them instantly, they started begging for her forgiveness. Luckily, Mo Fei was in a good mood today, and decided to leave. After arriving at the tower, Mo Fei was excited about leaving the city, but Yuen wondered why An Yu had told her to wait for him here. He had a bad feeling about this, and thought this must be the reason why Mo Fei became an angry fairy. When it was afternoon, Mo Fei realized that An Yu was still not there, but thought he was delayed by traffic or something, and decided to keep on waiting. Yuen wondered what An Yu's plan was, and thought he was definitely hatching something evil. By the 3rd night, Mo Fei remained on the tower, determined to wait for her Prince Charming. She had dreamt of this moment for weeks, and thought he may arrive as soon as she leaves. However, Yuen knew better, and began screaming at her to return to her senses, but there was no use. When it was morning, the guild master revealed that their town had been invaded by bandits in her absence, and that no one could escape to the city. Even so, Mo Fei told him that she wouldn't leave until seeing the love of her life. Just then, the bandits blew up the tower, and as Mo Fei regained consciousness, she thought her man must have been captured, and hurried to save him. As she ran down the steps, she began hearing his voice inside her head, and was sad that they wouldn't make it to the island together. In an instant, she slayed 2 bandits, but as she arrived outside, the other bandits threatened to eliminate a girl. Angered by the sight, she rushed forward and slayed them all. As she tried calming the girl, she stabbed her with a knife, and Mo-Fei realized she was one of them. At that moment, Anyu appeared before her eyes, and the girl told him that Mo-Fei was more gullible than a chicken. Her words were cold, and Mo-Fei realized that she was a useless, ugly loser after all. Desperate to reach him, she began crawling towards the men. But one bandit told her that her lover had suggested the plan himself. A few weeks ago, he had told the bandits that he would capture her, and in return demanded to be in charge of the Eastern District. For his plan to succeed, he had requested for a mere sword, and was convinced that it was all he needed. At this realization, Mo-Fei began walking towards them, determined to come face to face with Anyu, and ignoring Yuan's screams since she could not hear him anyway. However, she was soon forced to her knees, and the lead bandit told Anyu that he has no intentions of letting her live. As Mo-Fei remembered their moments together and that it was all a trick, she screamed like she had lost her mind. At the same time, the bandits started vanishing, and the others ran away as a group of fairies destroyed the town. With the town in flames, Anyu invited Mo-Fei for a conversation. Angered by his ugly, disgusting face, she began charging at him with her sword, but a fairy blocked her attack, and Anyu told her that he was unkillable. Even so, Mo-Fei wouldn't quit and began attacking the fairy, but she blocked everything. As she grew angrier, she struck with all her strength, but her sword broke in half, and she collapsed from her injury. Anyu thought she was tough and offered to help her live, so he caused a flower to begin glowing, and told her to become a fairy in return for her revenge. He told her that he travels across the world in search of worthy women to transform into a fairy, and said that she could only become one if she was willing to. Driven by anger and hate, Mo-Fei agreed to become a fairy, saying that she would return to eliminate him even in a reincarnated world. He told her that the flower was called Another Shore, and that they would meet again in a reincarnated world. At that instant, large vines bound her, and Yuan tried punching Anyu for being a jackass, but went through him and fell to the ground. When he demanded to know why he was hurting her, Anyu told him that she was only an NPC, and was trying to help her evolve. As they appeared inside a void, he told him that they were the same soul, and that they have the same dream of conquering the world. However, he considered this world a video game, and could care less about what happens here. Angered by his words, Yuan commanded him to free Mo-Fei, but Anyu vanished, and told him that he was too weak and useless to do anything. When Yuan wondered where he vanished to, the leprechaun told him that he was only talking to his soul fragments that was left in this world, and revealed that the vines was the seal trapping Mo-Fei. Desperate to save her, Yuan punched the vine, but realized that it was useless and thought he could free her by offing himself. After all, her seal had opened only because the vampire killed him. The leprechaun thought it was a terrible idea and told him that his spirit had built this world, and that it was powered by his spiritual strength. Without this power, he would never wake up, she said, but he told her that his life was irrelevant, but realized that he was too chicken to finish the job. Just then, the ground began trembling, and they realized that this world would soon vanish. At that moment, Yuan became determined again, thinking it was the only way to save Mo-Fei, and began climbing up the vines. When he was high enough, he began telling Mo-Fei that she was the love of his life, and has decided to abandon his desire of having a harem just so he can have her. As he gave her a goodbye kiss, he promised to return, and threw himself off to the ground. At that moment, Mo-Fei began to remember him in her memories, and how he had tried to warn her about Anyu. Just then, she woke up, and as she began freeing herself, the vines vanished instantly. When she appeared before him, she pulled out the sword and hurled it away, but as soon as she realized he was dead, she began to cry, wondering why he had chosen to remain a simp and isekai'd himself for her. She was sad to see him dead, having realized that he wasn't the same person that tricked her, so she wished to see him again, and said that she wants to stay by his side for the rest of her life. However, she had no powers to reawaken him, and realized that she would be lonely forever. Deciding to hug the ground, she began to leave, but Yuan regained consciousness and held her ankle. He wasn't certain how he returned to life, but told her that her funeral speech was touching. However, she grew angry, realizing how disgusting his face was, and summoned her sword to isekai his ass for good. Afraid for himself, he started begging for her forgiveness, saying that he managed to enter her spirit world using the princess's spirit energy so that he would save her. He had been the ultimate simp by deciding to hug the ground without even being sure he would return to life. So when she realized his life was too useless to even take away, she decided to spare him. To utilize his chance, Yuen suggested that they combine their spirits to defeat their enemy, so she held his hand and said that they were partners for life. At that moment, he returned to the original world, and the princess fell from exhaustion as she had grown hungry for some instant noodles. But he laid her on the ground, ready to take charge as a man. He told Mo Fei to join with his spirit. As she vanished, a light overwhelmed him as her spirit entered his body. And at that instant, thick roots began curling around him with a powerful energy, turning him into a god. Thinking he could eliminate him, the vampire knight flew at him. But Yuen knocked him to the ground and flew in for the killer blow. As he missed, he dug into the ground and summoned large roots to attack him, but the vampire destroyed them, and they began a relentless unending battle until Yuen kicked him towards the sky. As the knight cast a flame, Yuen cancelled it, and they clashed in the clouds before Yuen smacked him to the ground. Desperate for payback, the vampire took off to the sky, looking to slay Yuen, but he knocked him with a fiery punch that broke his sword and sent him crashing to the ground with a powerful explosion. As Yuen observed the sight of the explosion, he thought the vampire should be blown up into a million pieces, but Mo Fei told him that he was still alive. Yuen thought he could utilize this chance, so he tried persuading Mo Fei to travel the world with him, saying that their new experience together would change her spirit world. However, when he began wondering if her horns were made of wood, she grew angry and knocked his ass flat. The leprechaun told him that his brain was as useless as his face, as he was never meant to touch a fairy's horns. Just then, the chairwoman appeared before them and gave Yuen 2 fairy seeds for eliminating the vampires, saying that it was a pleasure doing business with him. However, Yuen thought she was too creepy and hurried away with Mo Fei. The next day at school, as Yuen laid asleep, exhausted from the previous night, the teacher welcomed the Princess Anqi and Mo Fei to the class as the new transfer students. And as Mo Fei introduced herself to everyone, all the boys thought she looked like an angel. When Yuen noticed them, he wondered why they enrolled at the school, but the boys thought he shouldn't have woken up from his nap. Anqi began saying that she had a great time last night and had barely gotten enough sleep from all the activity. And Mo Fei said that she was still sore all over the body. Anqi thought Yuen should last longer next time, and suggested that they play together on another night. When Mo Fei agreed, all the boys wondered how Yuen managed to have a threesome with 2 hot girls. After escaping, Yuen decided to visit the library, hoping to learn new magic. Inside, the librarian demanded to know why he came, so he told her that he wants magic books that would reveal how to unlock the magic of plant seeds. So to help him, she summoned a few scrolls, saying that he can only learn 2 of the scrolls at his current magic level, since he was far too weak and useless to go any further. That evening, Yuen arrived at a lake, and was happy that he would finally awaken the fairy seed. However, the leprechaun told him that his plant magic would have no power on the fairy seed, and Yuen thought his dreams of awakening more fairies were over. As he wondered why she had not revealed this earlier, she said that she intentionally allowed him to acquire the Encyclopedia of Plants, only for him to awaken the ability to assess the fairy seeds. Before his eyes, she consumed the encyclopedia and upgraded instantly. As she raised the seeds, the instructions for breaking their seal appeared before Yuen, but he thought the instructions were poetry, and decided to cast magic seeds into the lake. At once, plants sprouted out of the water and blossomed into beautiful flowers. Before long, the entire lake was covered with flowers, so Yuen threw 1 fairy seed inside the water and decided to wait for it to sprout. However, when it was morning, he realized that it didn't grow, and by evening, he began to wonder if it was ever going to bloom. At the same time, in a far city, the vampire knight arrived at his lord's castle, having survived Yuen's inferno. As he apologized for failing to capture the princess, the lord said that he was becoming useless, and told him that capturing Mo Fei was the only way to make amends. He said that he desires to conquer the world with the power of a fairy, and was determined to do so at whatever cost. However, the knight thought it was impossible, and told him that Mo Fei already has a master, but the lord couldn't care less, and told him to eliminate Yuen immediately. At the lake, Yuen noticed a light glowing underwater, and thought the fiery seed was finally coming to life. Before his eyes, dews began rising from the plants, and a new plant started forming inside a mystical light. When it was done, the petals opened, revealing a young fairy inside. It had taken a week for the flower to sprout, and Yuen was happy to finally achieve this success. But Mo Fei told him that the fairy was messed up in the head. Just then, the fairy thought Yuen was a fake for failing to awaken the other fairy seed, and threatened to eliminate him. As she flew to end him, Mo Fei drew her sword to protect her man. Before their eyes, a mystical light appeared on the other side of the forest, and as the clouds covered the moon, a plant began to sprout with all its flowers. At that moment, the beautiful petals opened, and a fairy appeared before them. Yuen thought she was beautiful, and soon realized that the fairies were sisters. After spotting Yuen, one fairy, Uexian, decided to thank him for awakening them, and called him her master. Together, they decided to ask him if he was willing to add them to his harem. But even the mere thought of it gave Yuen a nosebleed. When he realized that Mo Fei was close to sending him to the afterlife, he decided to cast a spell, drawing them into his magical device to seal their contract as their master forever. Mo Fei thought he was a greedy perv for desiring to increase his harem, but Yuen told her that he only wants to set the fairies free so they can choose their own future. The next day at the chairwoman's office, she told Yuen that the vampire knight was leading the Orphe army to eliminate him and capture the princess. The lady thought his presence at the school would put everyone in danger, so she commanded him to leave immediately, and to take the princess with him. That day, as he was ready to leave, the librarian appeared before him, and asked him to help her gather magical scrolls in every island they visit, so that the library would remain equipped with magic. So she gave him a crystal terminal, saying that it would offer him a reward every time he found a new magic, and thought it would be useful. Inside the forest, Yuen told the leprechaun to consume the crystal terminal so she would evolve once more. He thought they would be attacked soon, but hoped they would become stronger first. Realizing the other fairies had gone out of sight, he wondered where they were, so Anqui told him that they had headed to the lake. Thinking he would get to swim, Yuen began hurrying to the lake, and Anqui thought she would catch some crabs. However, a dragon appeared before their eyes, and Yuen realized that his plans were screwed. As it spewed a flame to obliterate him, Yuen blocked it with a mental barrier. The dragon began calling him a worthless, ugly bonehead, and wondered why he wasn't dead already so it could win over the fairies to its side. The second fairy, Lin, offered to take on the dragon for disturbing their peace, but Yuen decided to fight it instead. When the dragon threatened to destroy him in an instant, Yuen said they already eliminated a level 8 vampire, and were certain that it couldn't be half as powerful. Hearing those words, the dragon thought it was surely screwed, since it was only a level 3 dragon. However, when Yuen challenged him to a duel, it immediately accepted his challenge. As Yuen arrived inside the water, he cast vines to capture the dragon, and began to pull it towards the lake to stop it from using its fire ability. Because of that, the dragon decided to surrender, and threw down a flute so he could summon it whenever he was in trouble. After arriving at a resort, Yuen requested for 2 single rooms for the night, but the hotel receptionist wondered how he was going to develop plot in 2 separate rooms. That night, when Yuen met Lin, he began asking if she was sick, but she told him to get his ugly ass face out of her sight, as she had grown sick of his shit face already and couldn't wait to tear him apart. However, since Uexian had decided to stay with him, she said that she would also remain with him in the meantime. Yuen thought this was good news, but wondered why she hates him, so she told him that his useless face was enough to make her vomit. She said that she had woken up without the memories of her past, but was happy to have her sister by her side. Yuen thought she has amnesia, and told her that staying in the resort for a few more days would help her regain her memories. At that moment, her memories began to return, and she was angry to remember them. She thought Yuen was responsible, and began to blame him for being too useless and for digging his nose into her business. As she tried to hit him, a spell electrocuted her for attacking her master. At that moment, 3 mysterious dudes appeared before them, saying that they came to eliminate him. Using mental communication, Yuen told Mo Fei that his ass was in trouble, so she hurried off with Uexian. Yuen thought they were from the Orphe Empire and pulled the whistle to summon the dragon. At once, it arrived, and Yuen told it to obliterate the men. However, when it realized they came to capture the fairies, the dragon switched sides and offered to help the men kill Yuen instead, thinking it would finally claim a fairy. Just then, the men charged at them, so Mo Fei told Yuen to beat the dragon, and the fairies headed off to battle. As Mo Fei slashed several arrows, Lin kicked an enemy, and Uexian dodged another. When the dragon threatened to chew Yuen's bones, he began running off, but as he tried capturing the monster, it evaded the vines, and spewed fire that knocked him into the water. As the dragon flew at him, Yuen tried capturing it once more, but it burned up the vines. At the same time, Mo Fei retreated to the other fairies, and wondered if Yuen wants her help, but he told her that he was an incoming hero, and managed to capture the dragon inside large petals. Before he knew it, a seal appeared deep in the lake and began drawing him inside. Mo Fei noticed the mystical light before her and dived into the water to save Yuen. However, Lin thought this was their opportunity to escape and told Uexian to run away with her. One dude thought he could utilize their distraction, but Uxian blocked his arrows, and as her shield broke, a shard scratched her arm. This made Lin angry, and her shield repelled the men instantly. At the same time, Mo-Fei realized that Yuan had vanished, so she returned to the bridge, looking to put an end to the fight. On the other hand, Yuan woke up on an island, and saw An-Yu before him once again, telling him that a new game was starting, and that he had invited him to witness everything like it happened in Mo-Fei's spirit world. Just then, a girl arrived, and Yuan thought she was Lin. As she spotted him, she wondered if he was wounded, and decided to bandage him up, saying that she could never ignore an injured person. As she began to leave, Yuan decided to ask for her name, so she revealed that her name was Uxian. Yuan wondered if he was in her memories or was inside an alternate world, so An-Yu revealed that they were in the Land of the Seal, a world of Lin's memories that was separate from her fairy world. He told Yuan that the only way to heal Lin's pain was to understand everything that happened inside this world. However, Yuan thought An-Yu was up to no good, and said that he would rather return to the original world. Realizing his mind was made up, An-Yu decided to take his form, but told him that he could never leave. As he punched a tree, a miniature dragon fell off, and Yuan realized that it was the same dragon he had fought in the original world. An-Yu told the dragon to become his new servant, saying that he would return it to the real world after it completed its duty. As the dragon agreed, An-Yu told it to go spy on Uxian, so it flew off instantly. Before long, it returned, and began telling him that Uxian was a depressed girl with a sick sister, whom she couldn't heal of her illness. Hearing his words, An-Yu thought he had the perfect plan, and began to leave. Yuan tried to stop him, but he merely walked through him, making him realize that there was nothing he could do to stop this. Inside the town, An-Yu began waving at Uxian, and she thought he was Yuan. He told her that he learned her sister was sick and came to offer his help. When she was unwilling to accept his offer, he told her that he was an expert with herbs, and could even help her find the right ones for her sister's illness. Hearing those words, she thought this was her lucky day, and immediately accepted his offer. Shortly, they arrived inside a cave, and Uxian spotted an ancient herb she thought would be the perfect cure for her sister. As she tried hurrying to it, An-Yu revealed to her the huge monster before them, and pointed her in a different direction. Excited to collect the herbs, she hurried away, but the dragon thought it could eliminate both of them. Just then, the monster woke up, and An-Yu saved Uxian before she was crushed. Even so, she was determined to collect the herbs, and hurried to pluck one of them. Yuan thought she would be crushed, and screamed at An-Yu to get his lazy ass up, but he told him to save her instead. As the rubble nearly crushed her, Yuan tried to rescue her, but An-Yu flashed to her side and saved her, revealing to Yuan that it was a trap. Before he could run, the monster crushed him, and Uxian began running off with An-Yu. As they ran away, they soon arrived at a cliff, and Uxian realized that it was a dead end. When the beast appeared before them, Uxian grabbed a stick as her weapon, and told An-Yu to escape. As she hurried to strike the monster, it moved its paw, but An-Yu saved her from getting squashed. With the girl passed out from shock, he decided to set her down by a tree and appeared before the monster. But the monster grew angry at the sight of his useless face, so it smacked him to the ground, and the dragon thought he was killed. However, he merely held up the monster with a finger and electrocuted it before landing on top of the beast. Ready to end this, he knocked it with a finger, and soon spotted the scars on its furs, thinking that the dragon was the one who caused them, so he descended before it. As a punishment for its crime, he kicked it down the cliff. Just then, Lin woke up, and he gave her the basket, saying that her herbs were secured. However, the next day, when he wondered if her sister was healed, she told him that the herbs had failed to work, and that her sister may be growing worse. Deciding on a new plan, he told her that he knows a cure for her sister's illness, and called it the purity of 3 incarnations. Desperate to save her sister, Uxian told him that she was willing to attain the cure. That night, as Yuan followed her home, he discovered that her sick sister was Lin, and after a few days, An-Yu began following Lin around the fields, telling her that he wants to be with her forever. She thought he was only interested in getting laid, and told him to get lost. However, he wouldn't quit, and told her that he would be waiting for her the next day like a creepy stalker. As she left, Yuan began calling him a disgusting perv that was trying to get laid with 2 sisters. An-Yu said that he was an alpha male that could have whoever he wants, but Yuan thought he was a disgusting lowlife. That night in the sisters' home, Uxian told Lin that she intends to study a new prescription for her illness, but thought it would be dangerous for her to consume it, especially with its slight chance of success. Having nothing else to live for, Lin offered to try it anyway, but Yuexian told her that she was unwilling to take the risk. After all, her sister was better off bedridden than dead. The next day, Lin arrived in the fields to meet Anyu, having drank a potion to temporarily cure her pain. As Anyu woke up, he told her that he was happy to see her again, and offered to give her a ride on his boat. Before long, they began sailing on the lake, and Anyu revealed that he knows about her illness, and how she sacrificed herself to save her sister. At that moment, Lin's illness grew worse, and she coughed up a little sauce. As she passed out, Anyu told Yuan that saving her would change her entire future, and may cause her to even lose all of her memories. At the same time, Yuexian appeared on another boat, wishing she could exchange her own life for her sister. She felt guilty about the accident, and thought that giving up her life was the only way to make up for the past. That night, when Lin woke up at her home, she wondered how she found her way back, and thought her ride on the boat was merely a dream. The memory made her sad, and she shoved aside her soup, saddened by her illness. The following day, as Yuexian left to collect her usual herbs, Lin decided to drink the potion for her cure, and as she sailed on the boat once again, she realized that the previous night was not a dream after all. After a moment, Anyu told her that he had found a permanent cure to her illness. Eager to discover it, she asked to know what it was, so Anyu told her that the only solution was to eliminate her sister, and to take in all her blood for herself. Meanwhile, inside the original world, the vampire knight tried to slay the princess, but discovered that she was protected by an invisible barrier. Just then, Enqui woke up and hurried to him, recognizing him as her personal security. She told him that she was happy to see him again, and wondered if he was willing to join their travels. At that instant, they heard a blast, and the princess realized they were under attack. On the bridge, one enemy charged at Mo Fei, and the impact of his punch caused the waters to rise. As they charged to fight one another, she soon realized that Lin and Yuexian had been captured. The enemy thought he could utilize her distraction to knock her out, but she blocked his fist and destroyed a weapon. Just then, she spotted Anqui arriving with the knight, and wondered if she was in danger. As the fairies managed to free themselves, Anqui directed the knight to slay the enemies, but he sliced the fairies instead. One enemy wondered why he had not executed the princess already, but even the knight wasn't certain of what to do. Inside Lin's world, she spotted her sister with Anyu and thought she was fucking betraying them. However, Yuexian knew that she was spying on them and hoped that her plan would succeed. She began saying that she was sick of watching over Lin and wishes to have a life of her own, but she could not isekai her own sister. Her words made Lin grow worse, and she began coughing up sauce. That night at their home, Yuexian began telling Lin that she had found love and would soon elope with her man. She told her that she would be making her dinner for the final time, but Lin thought this was her chance to isekai her ass. However, after getting close, she realized that she couldn't finish her off. Even so, Yuexian was bent on finishing the job and forcefully stuck herself. As she began losing tomato sauce, she told Lin to take her to the lake, as Anyu would be waiting to cure her illness. So Lin carried her and began heading to the lake. After arriving, Yuexian apologized for being a bad sister and for pretending to hate her when she actually doesn't. As her soul left her body, Anyu began telling Lin that Yuexian had sacrificed herself for her, but Lin thought she didn't deserve it and began heading into the lake. Realizing her intention, Yuan tried to stop her, but she walked through him like a ghost. As she wished for a new life, Anyu told her that he has the power to grant it. He said that their only hope was to revive his fairies and sent her a mystical flower. As she touched it, a colorful light appeared instantly, stretching all the way to the sky and revealing a giant flower. After this, Anyu told Yuan that neither of the sisters became a fairy until he revived them with the fairy seed, and that Lin had cut off her own memories so that she wouldn't remember this very night. Yuan grew angry and tried to punch him, blaming him for their doom. As he missed again, Anyu knocked him to the ground. He told Yuan that he actually helped the girls by turning them to fairies, but thought they were both useless anyway, and evaded Yuan's blow. Just as he blocked his kick, he punched the air out of his lungs. However, Yuan still wouldn't quit, saying that the girls weren't video game characters that he could toy with, and began throwing relentless blows. But Anyu kneed him and knocked him down again. He told him that their deaths could not be changed by anyone, and wondered how he intends to change the future when he was stuck here. Within a moment, Yuan realized that this world had reset, and as he punched a tree, he discovered that he could feel his environment. So Anyu told him that he was offering him the chance to prove that he really could change the future. Yuan tried to punch him, but fell to the ground, and Anyu told him that he would remain stuck in this world if he couldn't change the past. At that moment, Yuexian arrived, and before long, they began a repeat of everything that already happened. Thinking he could change the future, Yuen told Uxian that he found a new cure for Lin's illness. However, after explaining the cure, Uxian told him that she tried it already and said that it failed to work. Later that day, Yuen decided to visit Lin for the first time, telling her that her sister found a prescription called the Purity of 3 Incarnation. However, it could only work with a special blood, he told her, and wasn't even guaranteed that it would be successful. He said that Uxian was keeping it away from her so that she would hate her, but told her not to fall for it. Lin thought he was a good guy and promised to resist Uxian's plan. The following night, as Yuen had dinner with the girls, Uxian thanked him for being a good simp and for following her around to collect herbs every day. Yuen thought his plan was successful and was convinced that he had changed the future. Just then, Uxian passed out on the table, and Yuen realized that the food was making them sleep. Lin began telling him that she was feeling guilty for keeping Uxian back and was willing to give up her life for her sister. By the time Yuen woke up, he realized the house was empty and thought something bad must have happened. As he arrived at the lake, he saw Uxian heading inside with her sister, who had already lost consciousness. He wondered if he really changed the future, but soon discovered that he merely changed the scenario. Convinced that he would save both girls next time, he asked Anyu to restart the memory once more, determined to find another way. Anyu told him that this was his last chance, and cast a mystical light on him, returning him to the very start. When Yuen woke up, he noticed Uxian, and before long, they began another repeat of all the activity until the night of the deed. Just as Lin was about to end her sister, Yuen screamed at her to stop, saying that Uxian doesn't hate her. As he grabbed the knife, he told Lin that her sister intends to cure her illness, and that they had agreed to deceive her. He said that no cure was worth taking a life for, and that they were better off sticking together forever, so he threw the knife into the window. As the girls began to cry, sad that they nearly betrayed each other, Yuen thought his work here was done, and decided to leave. Outside the house, Anyu congratulated him for his success, but told him that the future could not be changed in the first place. In an instant, they appeared inside a dark dimension, and Anyu told him that the former world had vanished since he successfully changed it, but that the present would not be affected. Yuen was sad that his attempt was merely a waste, but in another instant, they appeared in a new world, and he saw Lin before his eyes. She told him that she could see him in her memories, even though the past could not actually be changed. His desperate attempts had made her forgive herself, she said, and to accept her actions. So she kissed him and told him that he was truly a hopeless simp, saying that although the past can't be changed, they have a shot at saving the future. Instantly, a portal opened, and she told him that their friends were waiting for his support, and pushed him into the portal. Just then, the dragon joined him, begging for a chance to return to the original world. So Yuen entered into the light. In the original world, the girls noticed a light inside the ocean, and before their eyes, the dragon flew out of the water, and they realized that Yuen had returned. As the dragon spewed a flame, Yuen descended to the bridge, and told Anqui that he wants to give her a ride around the resort. Immediately, they ascended on the dragon, and the bad guys noticed that the vampire had been crushed by the dragon. However, he told them that he was ready to fight, but Yuen told him that they would kick his ass back to his kingdom. As the men charged at them, Lin decided to hold Yuen close, and instantly, a mystical energy surrounded them. The knight realized they were about to merge, and began hurrying towards them, but they ascended towards the sky, as Yuen transformed into a god. Even from his muscles, he knew that he had become stronger, and as he landed on the bridge, the force of the wind nearly blew the knight away. Yuen realized that this new power was different from his merge with Mo Fei, and thought he was a water god. Just then, the vampire charged at him, but Yuen covered him up with water, and with a snap, he caused the water to freeze, trapping him inside the ice. One enemy tried to end Uxian, but Yuen iced his hand, and threw him far off to a roof, completely frozen. Another dude launched a blast at Yuen, but it vanished, and Yuen promised to kick his ass. At once, he caught him in a torrent of water, freezing him and launching him high towards the sky. Just then, he realized that another enemy was starting to pull down the useless dragon, so he broke the ropes instantly, and followed him to deliver a flurry of punches before kicking him into the water. Just then, the vampire broke the ice, but Yuen told him to surrender, as he couldn't even beat him with a blindfold on. However, the knight told him that he was prepared to unleash all his power. At that instant, he activated his Aurora Dragon killing sword, and he burned with a fiery aura. Yuen told him that he intends to even the fight, and began to ascend higher. At his command, Mo Fei merged with him, and he transformed into a greater god. With his hand, he unleashed a powerful force that drained the vampire's strength, and told him that he was too weak and useless to face off with him. Determined to restore his honor, the knight began sliding over the water, looking to slay Yuen. but he evaded him. As he formed a trident from the water, the clash of their weapons caused the waves to rise, but Yuen shoved him away, proving he was stronger. So they began fighting like cockroaches in a box, and Yuen thought he was surely the most overpowered protagonist in the universe. Using the force of the water, he launched the knight far off, but he managed to land unscathed. With his trident, Yuen summoned a mighty wall that began firing ice spears, but the vampire managed to destroy them until one nicked his foot. Deciding to reveal his own power, he summoned several clones, and they began charging at the wall, destroying the ice with a barrage of broken abilities. As they all vanished, Yuen summoned a water tornado and flung the knight away, causing him to stumble over the water until he slammed into the bridge. With the Moron too weak to move, Yuen thought he could isekai him for good, and started preparing a mighty blast nearly as powerful as the sun. Luckily, Anqui arrived to protect the knight, telling Yuen to withhold his attack as she didn't wish to see her friend dead. Yuen was touched by her words, and launched the great ball farther towards the sky, exploding in an instant. Realizing the fight was over, the fairies separated from him, and they descended on the bridge. Anqui began asking the knight why he had attacked her friends, saying that Yuen was too powerful for him and would kick his ass any day. As she held on to him, she suggested that they return to their kingdom together, but he began to leave, ashamed of his betrayal. Realizing she would never see him again, Anqui began to cry. At that moment, lights began appearing around the water, and flowers sprouted in that instant. Before their eyes, a large flower appeared, and they noticed that Lin was ready to leave. She thanked Yuen for trying to change her future, but said that she could never forgive herself for killing her own sister. However, she couldn't bear to abandon her sister, so she told them that she would become the spirit of the lake, and would return whenever she needs her. Before leaving, she told Mo Fei that she was now the queen of Yuen's harem, and could use him for as long as she wants. Mo Fei thought her words were romantic, and promised to satisfy Yuen until he passed out from exhaustion. When Yuexian wondered who would become her new sister, Lin told her to make Yuen her family. As she let out those words, she vanished into the mystical light. Yuen was disappointed that his attempts to change Lin's present came to nothing, and thought he was a useless failure. However, Yuexian thought he did a great job, saying that her sister was no longer sad, and immediately entered his device. Just then, Mo Fei approached him, wondering if he remembered his promise to rebuild her spirit world. Yuen told her that he never forgot his promise, and that he intends to keep it. Satisfied with his words, she entered his device. With the fairies gone, Yuen suggested that they return to the town, but Anqui thought it was the only thing they could do anyway. However, as they rode off on the dragon, Anqui revealed a fairy seed, saying she had found it inside a cave. But Yuen knew he was about to deal with another psychotic chick, and wished he would get isekai'd back already.